We've got Steve Buchanan here to put up his Buchs, making his MLB picks at the following positions. Garion, Thorne, and Nick Friar will either agree or bravely disagree. Steve, put them up, dude. Pitchers first.
Yeah, I got to take it easy on Nick. It looked like he was crying before the show began, so I'm going to try to go easy on him. His takes are about as exciting as his backdrop, so we'll see what he has today. But let's start off with Lance Lynn going up against the Detroit Tigers. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Doesn't take a genius to take Lance Lynn against the Detroit Tigers, but here's what kind of has me on him. You look at some of the pitching options that are more expensive than him. Why the hell would I pay any of those dopes when I have Lance Lynn a little bit cheaper? Like, do I want to pay $9,800 for Adam Wainwright? No. Do I want to pay $10,300 for Taijuan Walker? No. I mean, maybe in 5 years ago, I'd be interested in that, but we're talking about 2021. So now you have Lance Lynn, who's been phenomenal across the board. Like, the advanced numbers match up with his ERA, his strikeout numbers are there, and now he's facing a Detroit Tigers team that likes to strike out. They don't do many things well, but they strike out a lot for the opposing pitcher, and that's something they do well. So you get somebody like Lance Lynn, who hasn't allowed more than 3 runs in any of his 9 starts this season. This is like a no-brainer. There should be no pushback on this. But that's why we have this segment, because maybe there will be. So now we're going to find out.
Okay, Nick, before you let us know if you are going to push back, can you confirm you were crying before the show?
Yeah, I was, because my eyes still hurt from that sweatshirt Steve wore last time we were on. It was like one of those trash bags you wear when you're on the treadmill.
Oh, man.
It's still hurting a little bit, so I apologize.
That's actually not true. There's a lot of people who like those sweatshirts, and you just sound, like someone who doesn't have one. But go ahead.
Okay. Am I allowed to talk now? I know I have to wait for Steve's permission on these segments usually, too.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I hate all the pitching matchups between Yu Darvish and Vladimir Gutierrez tonight, honestly. Lance Lynn, I understand that the Tigers are a team we can usually pick on, but what did they do against Garrett Cole? They didn't strike out a lot. What did they do against Corbin Burns? They didn't strike out a lot. So I understand that they may still not go and do a ton against Lance Lynn tonight, but I don't think that we're going to see this great fantasy production. I'd rather pay up for Yu Darvish, find a way to save with Vladimir Gutierrez too, who I know he's the lowest priced pitcher on the slate, and we've only seen him in one big league game, but he pitched against the Cubs and he went 5 innings, 1-run ball. Now you can go spend more on hitting. So, and then you have the top pitcher on the slate. I get it. It's chalky, but when you go and add Gutierrez in it, you spend more money on hitting, then we're fine. So no, I don't like Lance Lynn tonight, Steve.
Gare Bear, Steve calling Lynn a no-brainer. What do you call him?
I mean, I do think it's tougher than it would have been 2 weeks ago, because the Tigers have definitely improved is the wrong word. They're just not as bad as they usually have been across the last 2 weeks. They're still top 10 in baseball with a 25.5% strikeout rate, but it's not 30%. They've got a 99 WRC plus, which is below average. It's just not 80. So I'm hesitant to say this is a bad spot, because it's not. And I will use Lance Lynn. The fact that he's $1,000 cheaper than Yu Darvish, who is clearly the other stud pitcher you want to pay up for on this slate, that's enticing. But I think really what it comes down to, and this is what Steve alluded to, and Nick kind of did too, is pitching sucks on this slate. And I think at some point you're going to have to say, okay, I'm going to eat the chalk with a Lance Lynn, who's got a .96 ERA across his last 5 starts, because I'm going to eat it with Yu Darvish either way. So I do think Lance Lynn is super viable on this slate, and I will have some heavy exposure on Thursday.
Steve, your infielder here on this 8-game main slate, an old Red Sox friend of yours.
Yes, one of the highly touted prospects that we shipped away, but hey, that's okay. But Yoan Moncada going up against Casey Mize is probably not a matchup that springs out at you, because if you look at Casey Mize, he's been phenomenal in the month of May. When he got called up last year, we didn't exactly see stellar performances for him, but I think we're now kind of starting to see what all that hype was about. But if there's one blemish that has come about since he's joined the majors, is that he struggles against left-handed hitters. And that's kind of where I get this spot for Moncada here. Lefties have tagged him for a 328 WARBA, 5.34 FIP, and 4 of the 7 home runs he's allowed. Now, Moncada hasn't hit for a ton of power, so we do have to put that out there. But look, Nick's smiling. He's got a point that I brought up. But there's one thing about Moncada, is that he's getting on base and he's doing well even without the power. He's got a 394 WARBA, 157 WRC plus against righty so far this season, and he smacked dab in the middle of that White Sox lineup that is extremely, extremely tough to get out from top to bottom here. I mean, we've got guys like, Nick Madrigal hitting at the second spot, and he's actually doing well. Like, that really says something. So I think there's something really good about this White Sox lineup. I like Moncada going tonight against Casey Mize, and quite frankly, I don't think he's going to have terribly high ownership because of how well Mize has been pitching, but I do like him a lot tonight.
Nick, are you smiling because you like this pick, or are you just happy to be here? What is it?
I would definitely say I'm happy to be here with Steve here today, but I thought he made a good point with Moncada and how he's lacking in the power department, and I think
thanks.
Very well, you're welcome. But if I'm looking at the top infielder that I'm going after tonight, I'm actually going to go to the catcher position. I'm going to go with Salvi Perez because since May 19th, I think it was, he's one of 13 players with an OPS against left-handed pitching of 1.500 or better. And he's going up against J Happ tonight. And his ISO's through the roof against lefty pitching in that span too. And against Happ, he's got a 1050 career OPS against him too. So I think staying in the AL Central is the way to go. I think Moncada, I think Steve kind of made an argument for me why I wouldn't necessarily go with him with his lack of power. I get Mize has had some struggles against certain types of hitters, but I like Mize tonight. I really do. So I don't necessarily think he's going to go. And I'm going with Salvi Perez, not Moncada.
Garion, how are you feeling about Yoan Moncada?
Nick and I have a pretty similar line of thinking here, and I guess Steve does too. Just because you point out the flaw in the pick doesn't mean it doesn't count. Yoan Moncada can't hit for power. I mean, this is a pretty big flaw right now, especially for someone who's $5,400. I understand that if you go back to the start of May, he's hitting like 324. That's fantastic. But this type of salary it requires a certain archetype of player. And right now, Moncada is not that guy. He's got a 118 isolated power across that span of time where he only has one home run. I don't know if he's trying to change his approach to the plate and if he's really trying to sacrifice power for batting average right now. That seems like something Tony La Russa would tell a guy. So it's definitely possible. But I'm with Nick also in the sense that if I've got this much money to spend in the infield, I think you find a way to get exposure to the Royals. Whit Merrifield is also $5,400, and he's not a power guy as well, but he offsets that by leading the majors in stolen bases. He's got a lot of different ways to possibly reach value where I do kind of respect Casey Mize. He's held his opponents to a 239 slugging percentage in the month of May. Look, I don't think Moncada's in a terrible spot. I just think there are better ways to use your money tonight.
Steven, put up your Buchs at outfielder, please. What's going on? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I was just making a personal note to unfollow Garion, and I don't follow Nick anyway, so not a big deal. Let's talk about Mitch Haniger, okay? I mean, this is somebody you would always put in your lineup when he was going up against lefties. But here's the beauty about Mitch Haniger on a great team, the Seattle Mariners, who are still winning the AL West, by the way. Just have to throw that out there. Nick's rolling his eyes. He's never made a bold take in his life. It's not a big deal. But Mitch Haniger against righties, yeah, exactly. Mitch Haniger against righties has been a really good spot for him. I mean, you look at his numbers against righties so far this season, 358 WOBA, 252 isolated power, DraftKings fantasy points. He's averaging just under 10 DraftKings fantasy points against righties. Now he's going up against Griffin Canning, who, I mean, amazing. He's still in a starting rotation anywhere. The Angels aren't going anywhere, so they got to throw some people out there, but he's just been absolutely atrocious on the mound with how well Haniger has been hitting. He's going to kind of carry the load now that Kyle Lewis looking like he's going to be out for a considerable amount of time, but that's okay. Now the Mariners are going to be buyers at the deadline, so that's even better. They'll get somebody else on that team. But I think Mitch Haniger is in a really good spot tonight. He's at 5K. Maybe these guys won't, grumble their bellies about playing 5K for somebody, but I think Haniger's in a really good spot tonight against Griffin Canning.
All right, go ahead, Nick.
Well, I mean, I got to be smart about how I'm spending my money, Steve. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't just go and spend $5K on anybody. So that's why I'd rather pay.
I can tell you do that by your wardrobe that came from the Walmart clearance section, but go ahead.
What are you talking about? This is, okay. Wow. Okay. I'm
wearing a black t-shirt and a free hat. So
Garion, you know what?
If we're gonna
yeah,
take
but it
shots,
doesn't, it doesn't look like, it doesn't look like a free hat though, Garion. That's like the key to life, to get something that's free, but make it not look like it came to you free.
Exactly.
I agree.
Exactly. And nobody does it better than you, Garion. I wish I had a hat like that, actually. But I'm not going with Mitch Haniger tonight. I'd rather pay. I'm going to go stay in the outfield. I'd rather get Jock Peterson at 4.5K against Anthony DeSclafani. Yeah, here's a bold take for you. You said I've never done it before. I hate Jock Peterson, but guess what? He masters right-handed pitching. He's done well against DeSclafani throughout his career, and then the San Francisco bullpen is terrible too. So I want exposure to DeSclafani tonight. I know Chris Bryant's done well against him too, and so has Rizzo. But we're talking outfield here. I'm going to go with Jock Peterson.
Care Bear.
Haniger's interesting. He is really interesting. He's a great hitter in a vacuum. He is the only person hitting on the Mariners. That's a little bit troublesome. I mean, you look at Haniger's game logs the past couple weeks, he's hitting incredibly, but he's only got 5 RBI in his past 16 games because no one's ever on base, and he never scores any runs because no one ever drives him in. The Mariners just can't hit right now. I do think they are an interesting sort of contrarian GPP stack, having said that, just because Griffin Canning is suddenly like $9,200 on this slate, and people are going to want to use him because Sean Manaea just shut down Seattle last night. Guess what? Sean Manaea is a lot better than Griffin Canning, who has been terrible so far this season. So I think there's a chance to like play the leverage with Seattle, but at the same time, that means spending a lot of money on the Seattle Mariners. And I think I'd rather just pay up for like Christian Yelich in a pretty good matchup against the Diamondbacks. Nelson Cruz draws a lefty. He's 5-1, so just $100 more expensive than Haniger. You really have to be willing to take an L if you're going to put a bunch of Mariners in your lineup tonight.